where me and Eric both grew up, which was in the same circle in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, just different ends of it or sections of it. But where we both grew up, we frequented the same areas in order to get stuff because of the fact that there was nothing around us. And
Yeah.
one thing that we never had in our area, or neither of us really probably stepped into until we were in our teens, or maybe kind of didn't even know existed in a way, was hobby shops.
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea.
We were probably teenagers when RC cars started becoming popular. A neighbor of mine got one for Christmas or whatever, and I was like, what is this? Like, where did this? They didn't sell the one that he had at Toys R Us.
Yeah, you're not talking about like the toy remote control cars,
No.
but like the serious ones.
Yeah, the ones that you had to either sometimes you had to put gas in them, or I think his had the
Oh,
battery,
yeah.
but
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw one where someone in the neighborhood or something was it was sort of like a dune buggy-ish kind of thing, but it was big, and it had like, I think it even had like inflated tires.
yeah, it had inflating tires. It even had shocks, so you could push down on it and actually had like
Yeah.
good. I remember the big deal was it worked in the sand.
Yes, that and like unlike the toys that we had, right, where you basically had to be practically on top of it to keep it running, you could run this thing like down the block.
Yeah, like you could get to the end of the block with it and come back, and you didn't have to go chase it because it could come back to you. The signal was that good.
So you were saying like a neighbor that's when you
Yeah,
saw
like a
them?
neighbor got it somehow, and we were all like, "Where did you get this? Like, where did you get?" And he ended up getting into the hobby shop at the time that was, I guess, and it's been there forever. Was in Manahawkin.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like in the '60s, and I guess it opened in the '60s or '70s. This is like a little one and down there, and so I remember going down there with my dad to look at those cars, and they were ridiculously expensive. I mean, they were more than a bike was, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
They were like $150 or $200 at the time, like in the '80s.
In 1980s money, yeah.
So I never got one, but it was just that was my first time going in a hobby shop and being surrounded by models that you could paint, model car things, and all the.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! Yeah, that was mind blowing. The first time you see a shop with just models everywhere, because
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still a thing. Maybe it is, but you remember at the time growing up, building models was a huge hobby.
Oh
Huge
yeah,
hobby.
yeah.
Like, I think all of us had, if you didn't do it yourself, which I didn't, had at least like one. You had that one friend who was either like cars or planes, where they just their room was filled with them. Just I like my one friend, who was actually one of the brothers who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons. He was into like making the jet models.
Okay, yeah.
So his room, they were all hanging on strings everywhere, all the planes and stuff.
That's
like
awesome,
that.
though.
Yeah, it was super cool. So did you end up getting into RC cars at all after that?
I never ended up getting RC cars, but everyone in the, I think 2 kids in the neighborhood ended up having ones, and they were awesome. Eventually, it died down, but I did get into from going. I ended up getting. I only ever built 2 models in my life because I didn't have like I always felt like, oh, it's too overwhelming. You got to like build the pieces, you got to glue it, and then most times you had to paint it.
Yeah,
And I was like, and I was like, there's no way it's happening. So I got a space shuttle model
Oh, that's cool.
because I love the space shuttle. Like, you know, we both have that love of space and the space shuttle, but it was also white, so I didn't have to paint it.
You were just decals?
Yeah, so I just had to put decals on it. So I was like, that's cool. And I remember somebody once bought me a purple Corvette, but the Corvette was a concept version of a Corvette. So it was like the 1999 Corvette, like what it'll look like in 1999. And again, I didn't have to paint it because it was already purple. But I remember like being like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna try to put this thing together.
So, all right. So, were they snap models or glue models?
Both of them were snap models. I think. I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, you had to do some gluing, but not like how the ones you're talking about where you just exclusively have to glue everything.
Yeah, I mean the whole reason why I give you the thumbs up is because I was so intimidated by the glue models.
Yeah.
I was like the same as you. I was like, oh, I was overwhelmed. I loved the idea of doing them because I had 2 friends who did models, but I was just No, they all did. So I think I did a couple of like snap models, but they were real basic stuff. Like I think some cars or something like
Right.
that. And in fact, at one time I had this a collection of these pre-made model cars on like these plastic bases. They were really nice. Now that I totally forgot until just now that I had this collection. I had like a dozen or more of them. And now I need to look them up to see what they were. But anyway, when it came to building models, I was just super intimidated by like the intricacy of the parts and the gluing, and then like you said, the painting. So I did a couple of snap models, and I was like, I cannot go any further than this.
I'm glad you say that, because I know that you've painted the little miniatures and stuff like that in your time. And I'm glad that you just say it, because like I remember just being intimidated, but being like, I don't understand. Is this fun? Like, is it fun for people? Like, because it seems so difficult. Like you were saying, like even remember they used to some of them had the decals where you had to wet them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were like on a clear plastic.
Yeah, and it's like you had to wet them in like warm water, and then you had to peel them off, but hold them with some, and then put them on. But they would kind of stick around. Yeah, you had to, like I never understood.
It way harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, like I never understood that part of it. But I guess there were people that was like their sewing or their whittling kind of thing. It was like this intricate little thing.
I always found that whole hobby, as much as I think it's really cool and it's fascinating and I'm drawn to it, but it's so precise and it's so intricate, and you need such a fine level of detail and patience and so on for it. I just don't have the temperament for it. Like even with the stuff I've been doing, like the model train and all that stuff, like it looks neat, but it only looks neat because with something like that, you can afford to be a little sloppy, because it's just like Mother Nature. It's
right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's just yeah.
Mother Nature is sloppy. So if my paint is a little screwed up or this is a little uneven or whatever, it doesn't matter. In fact, occasionally that works in your favor because it looks a little more natural.
Right. I was always impressed by those people. If anybody ends up watching this that used to do it, I'm curious to hear, because you remember that was the thing. I remember my dad talking about when he was a kid, the big thing was painting the monster.
Oh yeah,
busts
that was a big
and
thing.
Stuff. Right?
Yeah, like the Wolfman.
Yeah, Frankenstein, and all the hobby shop was filled with shit that I couldn't do. That's basically what hobby shop was.
Totally. After finally discovering what local hobby shops we had, and the one that you mentioned, I did not know about. If I remember right, and I might be wrong, if I remember right, the first local-ish hobby shop that I discovered and realized it was like a thing was, and it's still there, I think it's called Hobby Masters, I think, but it's a place in Red Bank.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
It's like and I try and put the audience out of my mind when we're doing chat shows, but just to give some context for people, this is a hobby shop that is about a block away from Kevin Smith's comic book shop.
Okay.
It's on like the cross street, and basically if you come off the cross street, you're like right at Kevin Smith's hobby shop or comic book shop, which I don't know if you know, Tig, but like that's now like an internet famous place.
Yeah.
I think, didn't he have like a comic show or something?
Yeah, he had a show for a while that was broadcast out of he was filming out of there.
Yeah. I got to be honest, I've been in there a couple times, and maybe it's better now. It's been like 15 plus years since I've been in it, but the last time I was in there, it wasn't a very good comic shop.
I think it was more of a he has his own comic shop than a.
Yeah, I guess, and that's not a knock on him, and he's a legit fan.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, I think it's called Hobby Masters. Brainy Bryan would know for sure because he still goes there. But it was 2 stories.
Oh man.
And the first floor was a lot of their RPG stuff. Like I actually bought a good deal of role-playing books there. So there's all the RPG stuff, like books and all that, miniatures and all that. And then you would go upstairs, and the whole second floor, which was, let's see, I'd say about twice the floor space of the full attic.
Jeez.
It was the full attic plus 50% or like twice. Was nothing but trains.
Wow.
a whole wall of engines and box cars and all that stuff, and then all the scenery. There was a setup, cars and all that, just everything trains upstairs. And then the downstairs was like all role-playing stuff, and I think there were also like model cars and things like that were up there. From what Brainy Bryan tells me, the place is mostly dead, and I don't even think they have the upstairs anymore.
Really?
But yeah, but that was like the first local place that I remember discovering, and it was mind-blowing to walk into a place to just have this sea of geek stuff around you.
We've said before we both grew up going to the same Toys R Us, but then when you first go to a hobby shop, it's like a whole different nerdy toy geek thing that,
Yeah.
like you said, you almost feel like overwhelmed. Like that's the thing too. I remember the rockets, not just.
Oh my God, yeah. That was still is a big hobby, actually. Because my son did that when he was in Scouts, and there were some people who were way into it.
I remember I got one. We didn't get a real big one. We got one that just kind of went up maybe like 50 feet, and a parachute would open and it would come down.
Oh, you didn't do a multi-stage rocket?
Yeah, I was gonna say I had a friend who did the Saturn V or whatever. Like three at the time, I swear, it was up to my nose when he built it. How does it? Where is this going?
What the fuck? Yeah,
I remember that was the big deal. It was like it goes a quarter mile into the air, and you're like, what?
Yeah, the level that some of these hobbies get to is mind blowing. I remember. So I grew up next to a naval base, and as a kid, we sneak onto the base and just sort of wander around and explore and all that. And so one day, as kids, some of us, we snuck onto the base, and we went to. There was this little strip that was. I don't think it was an old unused runway area. I think it was just a road that led to something that never got built.
I know what that is, but go ahead.
It was, and so when we got out there, I think we ended up at that spot because we heard this buzzing, and we were like, "What is it? Let's go to it." And so we get there, and there's just a couple of dozen old guys who are flying these huge model planes, and so and it was this whole and so we came out of the woods as kids. We literally came out of the woods on military property near them, but this was pre 9/11.
Yeah,
so,
everybody.
We didn't get shot or tear gassed or anything. and the old guys were just super happy to like show us what was going on. They because when you're an old guy, you want to show everyone.
Yeah, look at my hobby.
I'm now reaching that age. I'm now going to be that guy. But we came out and yeah, they're flying these remote control planes that have 3+ foot wingspans, and the planes probably costing me $2,000 each.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Like, what a hobby.
I remember you used to be able to go there to watch them race them.
Could you officially go?
Yeah, you could go and watch the races there.
Because we would go through a break in the fence behind this church that abutted the woods. That was again like one of these early exposures to the length and the depth that the hobbies could get to.
And that's when, as a kid, I realized that the stuff at a hobby shop wasn't mostly for kids. Was when right, like, because you'd walk into the store and you'd see, oh, there's a car you can build here, but then there's also a rocket, or there's a plane hanging from the ceiling that's 3-4 feet long, but you can fly it. How much does that cost? Can I have that? No, it's like $2,000, and then you also have to buy the engine, and you also have to buy the controller.
Yeah, it's like, what kid is
then that? You realize, oh, it's a hobby shop, but it's hobbies for adults. They work for a living, and this is what they're doing in their spare time.
As we know now that we're reaching that age, like that's just one of the other major hobbies I remember being exposed to early on, or like when I first sort of discovered the wider world of hobbies, and we found a place that was nearby where there was a big thing with this, and Brainy Bryan got into it big time.
Oh God!
And he's still kind of into it, but he like on and off. But was slot car racing.
Oh, dude, I have a cousin who has
really
over my dad was just telling me a couple years ago, but he's been doing slot car races his whole life.
I can,
Like goes to the places and races them and has these special ones. But I remember my dad always telling me
that stuff is nuts. And one time, and that's another hobby that always intimidated me because there's this mechanical aspect where, because these guys are working on their cars like with fine detail and all that. And at one time, Brainy Bryan had a good little selection of like 4 or 5 or 6 like decent slot cars, and he kind of knew what he was doing with them. I think he ended up selling most of them, but but now some of them can be pricey. But we used to go to Collingswood, and there was like I don't know what people call them in other parts of the country, but for people who are watching, we call them flea markets. Right. These mostly open air markets, but the bigger ones there was all the open air market part. I think in the South they call them swap meets.
Okay.
But then you had the indoor part too, right?
Right.
Where the permanent.
The permanent places where the same people were always at the same.
Yeah, and at Collingswood there was a like a track, like a full place where the slot car racers were. So, and I remember going there with my old man and my brothers, and Brainy Bryan was like super into it, like racing the slot cars and all that. So he got into that hobby, and he kept into it on and off, like into adulthood, where he would have renewed interest in it. And so check this out. Just the weekend that the COVID-19 restrictions went into place in our state, Brainy Bryan and I took one last like walk out to various stores and all that. We just had this night where we were out bumping around the stores and shopping and stuff like that. And so we were in the Barnes & Noble that you and I go to. And we're at the magazine rack. And we were talking about model railroads, and I think you and I have had the conversation too, sort of wondering, like lamenting the death of model railroads and wondering, like, is it just old white guys who are, that's all that's left? Because model railroad magazines are expensive now, like $15 an issue and all that. And so he started talking about slot cars. Now, mind you, the Barnes & Noble is basically empty. And it's literally just me and Brian and like some old guy and his son. Like, I say old, but he was probably my age. So old.
So, yeah, old.
Like, some guy and like his like 20-something son also at the magazine rack. And Brian starts talking about slot cars. And he said, I've heard that there's unofficial places you could go, like clubs and stuff that, and I swear the other guy, the guy turns to him, he's like, are you talking about slot cars? And Brainy Bryan's like, yeah, why? And he's like, oh yeah, there's actually like some sort of rogue pirate places. Like, I'm really into slot cars. I got my son into it too. We're here to get slot car magazines. And they had this whole conversation about the freaking slot cars theme. And apparently, according to this guy, in our area, there are at least 4 or 5 private slot car tracks that these old guys have in their house.
Oh, sure.
That's like an invitation only, but they're these mega tracks that cost them thousands and thousands to build. Like, hobby stuff is crazy, dude. It's crazy. I remember the cars were awesome. I remember them. They were really cool, but really like intricate as far as like the parts and all that stuff. But yeah, I never like really got into it, but he definitely did. Yeah, hobby stuff is wild, man. Like, I with building the train that I've been building, and it's fun, and I'm really enjoying it. But then when I look at the boards that are dedicated to people who do it, and not only seeing their work, which is so intimidating, but the techniques that they're using, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just some asshole who, like, after a few beers at night, I just want to sling paint on things and all that.
I think that's what it is. It's. I think when it comes to those kind of hobbies, it's like trains. Like, we've both talked about how I think that's like I think a lot of people have a point where they're really into trains. Like, when I was a kid, my dad had Lionel trains. When he had his kids one, so we used to play with it on Christmas. And same with you. You grew up having trains around you and stuff. So you end up at some point kind of getting into it. And there's a place up in the middle of I think like North Jersey or middle of New Jersey where the train where you can go. And we went there and I bought a couple like cars.
You did go?
Yeah, I've gone there before.
I want to go so bad.
We-
I've seen pictures online, and it's amazing.
We've talked about me and you going. I remember when we were talking about the one time, and then all this shit happened. But we were talking about going to film there because it's huge. But you go and you realize that you're just a poser. You feel like even if you're into it, because you're like, oh, I kind of have I have this train set I've had for a couple of years, and I'm thinking of getting. And then you see these setups where these guys, it looks real, And there literally were guys running trains that ran on actual coal.
Yeah, it's like with my little fantasy miniatures, right? Most of the ones I did were crap, but there's a handful that I did that I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'll show them to people, and people are like, oh, that looks great. That looks great. Then you look at the people who can actually do it, and then you realize, like, oh my god,
but
this is just.
I guess that's the thing, though. I guess with hobbies, you kind of are doing. You have to eventually just. I wish I would have thought about this.
You have to love the process.
Yeah, and I think you have to realize that you're not going to do as good as the person that they show in the magazine or you see, because they're like the pros. They've been doing it forever. I wish I would have thought that way as a kid, because I probably would have gotten into it more if I realized, no, just buy it and glue it together, and if you enjoy doing it, then just do it.
I think before we wrap on this topic, I at least want to say, the important thing is just you loving the process, and the results kind of in some ways don't matter as long as you've enjoyed the journey of like doing it.
Right.
And I say that as somebody who engages in art that I'm not necessarily very good at. I paint on a regular basis, and I love doing it. I absolutely love doing it. It's cathartic, and I enjoy it a lot. Am I a good painter? No, probably not. I think I'm probably pretty terrible. Doesn't matter. Don't care. I write and record a lot of music. I've been doing it for a lot of years. I'm not a skilled musician, and that is an objective fact. I do think that I think I'm good at what I do, but I do a very specific and niche thing, and it's very geared towards like my specific vision. So what does that even really mean for me to say that I'm good at what I do? Because for most people are going to listen to it and be like, what is this shit? And that's okay, because for me it's not about that. It's not about like, look, I've done something that that's equal to the Rolling Stones or whatever. Insert your band here. It's about the process. It's about the journey. It's about the experience of doing it, and that's also what I'm finding with building the terrain. I can like look at my stuff, really see where the flaws are and all that, but ultimately I don't care, because those nights when I'm doing it, I just feel good because I'm not thinking about anything other than just I'm putting some paint down and putting some bushes and all that stuff, and that's what it's about. It's about doing it.
Yeah, which I guess is that's where those guys who are flying planes on the base, and guys that are people that are into painting the models, or they're just enjoying it. So and they enjoy it so much that they're getting better at it. So it's really, you're seeing them at the point where they're like, well, I've been doing it for 10 years and I've just advanced in my skill of doing it because I love doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think with any hobby, that's really all that matters. Ultimately is like, are you enjoying the process? Are you enjoying the journey of making or doing whatever you're doing? And if you are, then that is the gift. That's the gift. The end result is cool, and if you have a great end result, that's awesome. But if you enjoy the journey, that's way more important.
Yeah, that's why it's a hobby. Yeah, it's like a hobby is supposed to be just something that you do that you enjoy. You're not doing it to make money in a way. You're doing it because it's your leisure time.
Yeah, exactly.
We now conclude our scheduled broadcasts for today. Thank you for joining us. Good night.